we had just kayaked for 10, 11 hours straight. And at the time, I was not in shape. Lord, I'm not in shape now. That kind of kayak trip would still probably kill me. Um, but to put in perspective how amped up I was, how much the adrenaline kept me going, not only did I immediately decide this was for me, I loved every minute of it. But our mutual friend Justin and I then left the takeout point and went fishing more.
See, I'm curious. As I don't think that was so much out of being hyped up about kayaking. I think it was out of frustration of not catching a fish all day, and you just had to go somewhere and catch something.
Well, I mean, I did spend a lot of money on crickets to take for bait, but that's neither here nor there. I'm pretty sure it was because of the adrenaline.
uh, and I think you mentioned something that's pretty important to think about when you talk to people about why they like kayaking so much: the freedom. Um, I had an aluminum John boat, and me and Leah could go out and go to Jackson Lake or Hammertown or any of those lakes, and we could spend the day together, putting around. Uh, but we were always stuck doing what the other person wanted. And in a kayak, you don't have that. You can go to any brush pile you want. You can float in the middle of the creek. You can do whatever you want. Get out, stretch. When you're in a boat with somebody, that's not an option. That's one of the things that I really like about it. And then on top of that, you've got this physical aspect. The boat doesn't move with a motor. The boat moves under your power. By the end of the day, you've got this satisfying feeling of knowing I just moved myself miles in a boat using just a paddle on my two hands and my shoulders and my back. And that kind of physical attachment to something you're doing is, to me, it's very important.
Absolutely. I will say, you kind of alluded for that first trip. You said you'll probably be kind of sore the next day, having never done this before. Um, I couldn't move the next day or the day after because um, there is a very physical aspect to kayaking. But I I have to agree 100%. It's a feeling that is very unparalleled, um, outside of shoot going to the gym, spending time in the gym, or doing hard work. And I know, I don't want to scare anybody off thinking about getting into kayaking. Like, oh man, it's like going to the gym or working hard. I don't want to do that, because when you're doing it, when you're kayaking, when you're out there taking nature in a very more intimate basis, like you said, there's no motors. You are under your own power. It's a very gratifying experience, and the things that you see, the experiences that you have while kayaking, stand out for that reason. If you remember on that first trip, one of the things that I still think about often is, alongside the highway that runs along the little side of the river where we were. At one point, who knows how many years ago, uh, somebody decided that the best way to keep the bank from eroding out from under the road was to stack old junked cars under the roadbed and then put a road over top of it.
Yep,
And that's a road that I had been driving since 2009 regularly, and I never knew that was there. So that,
Yeah, I've definitely seen some of the most interesting things in my life on a kayak, just paddling around. It's truly remarkable what you can see, especially when you're taking in that surrounding at a much slower pace.
hmm
You know, when you're paddling a kayak, I'm not going to get into the speeds or anything, but it's slower than a motor, even a trolling motor, and it gives you the opportunity to really see what you're going through.
oh yeah,
Um, you know, all these things that we've picked up, I think they're important things to tell other people that want to get into kayaking. Um, we've learned a lot of valuable lessons through our years of paddling a boat around. Um, and I think if more people can hear some of those things, it may encourage them to step out of their comfort zone and do something a little scary, just like you did that first time.
for sure.
Uh, it also, I felt a little bit bad for that first trip because I was putting you in Leah's kayak, which was just a little bit smaller version of mine.
hmm
Uh, and I knew once you paddled that kayak, you would be absolutely hooked because it was a higher end kayak. Let's go ahead and be honest. You know, I sold my John boat to buy those kayaks, so I had the extra money. I went out and I bought a really good kayak.
Right.
What I'm afraid of whenever I tell people they should start kayaking is that they're going to go out and get, you know, a $200 kayak, and they're going to go paddle it one time, and they're going to hate it, and that's totally not the way to do things.
So I feel like there's a lot to be said, um, because one of the things that we've talked about quite a bit is how kayaking allows you to access water that you've never been able to access before. Because in my kayak, even as a hefty guy, um, I can go places that you could never take a bass boat, for example. But I think in saying that, along with that, knowing that the quality boat you're getting affects your experience, kayaking and kayaks in particular are definitely a thing where you get what you pay for. But that's not to say that, in my opinion, if you can't afford one of those top of the line kayaks, that you should be afraid of it. You should just understand that maybe the Pelican or Sun Dolphin that Walmart, Rural King, or Tractor Supply sells um, isn't the best kayak out there. But that also doesn't mean that you can't get in one and take it out and take some hard lessons and learn a little bit about kayaking and look to improve later on.
That's a good point. I don't want to discourage anybody from starting off with a less expensive boat. That's probably the way I shouldn't have put it. Um, absolutely, if all you can afford to begin with is one of those lesser expensive boats, um, maybe it should be better to say you should have realistic expectations about how you're going to feel after a trip,
That's fair.
because those boats serve a very specific purpose, and they do get people out on the water to enjoy themselves, which is fantastic. Everybody should be doing whatever they can to get outside. That's kind of the point of what we're trying to do. Just encourage people to get outside and make them not scared to try something. Um, but if you research and plan and save, you can make your experience much better by knowing what you need in a kayak.
For sure.
Just like you, whenever we first took you out on it was a Wilderness Systems Tarpon 100 was the one you were in.
hmm
Uh, you were sore at the end of the trip, But I honestly feel like the seat system in that kayak prevented you from being unable to get out of it at the end of the trip.
Yeah, that is the one area of kayaks that a lot of people and potentially a lot of companies, review companies, things like that, overlook when rating kayaks and talking about kayaks in depth. Um, the seat is a huge part of the experience. Um, a lot of people don't really think sitting in that position for that length of time is that difficult. But if you don't have the right seat, it's pretty tough.
It's awful. And I've been pretty lucky. I started off with my wilderness systems, so I'm kind of spoiled. But I've had buddies that have went with us and started off, like you said, on the Sun Dolphin.
Hmm.
And by the end of the trip, they were so done with kayaking, they almost quit.
Yeah,
Um, Thankfully, they didn't. They just upgraded their kayak and then had a much better experience. Um, but I think for a couple of the people that I've talked to in particular, just not doing enough research really really hampered their ability to get the right kayak, because there were other kayaks that were in their price range that would have been much better for what they wanted to do.
hmm
For example, we like to fish. So having a kayak that has the option to upgrade some of the fishing equipment, such as rod holders, spaces to store your tackle box, a little bit higher weight limit because you're going to be carrying more gear with you. Those things are pretty important to look at before you buy a kayak.
for sure. Um, and if you remember, I I learned my lessons about buying the right boat the hard way. Um,
Oh, yeah,
you talk about starting in a wilderness systems, which many people know wilderness systems, especially the tarpon line, um, is a very very high end kayak. On the other hand, I got my start with an Ascend FS12T model kayak. And for the uninitiated, that is a 12-foot long, 33-inch wide behemoth of a kayak without the seat that weighed 80 pounds. So you add the seat, and you're looking at a 90-pound kayak, give or take. And the weight of the kayak was a bear to deal with. But if it was only the weight of the kayak, it would have been fine. The pros, okay, because I don't just want to talk bad about it. I had plenty of adventures in those kayaks that were good. The pros, it was a wide open deck. It had plenty of storage. I could take multiple fishing poles. I could take all the tackle I could dream of, and even pack a small cooler to take water and snacks on the water with me. Um, but the drawbacks, especially of those particular models in that run, um, they were a poor mold. They cracked. They leaked. I don't know if you remember, but I think probably the second trip that we went kayaking together, we hit Brush Creek
oh yeah, that's
and
right.
we paddled, I don't know, maybe 2 hours, and we weren't having any luck. And we reached a point, maybe about a halfway point, where we wanted to paddle upstream. I think we had planned to paddle a little bit further upstream, and I had to stop. And I told you, I said, Zach, I'm sinking.
Yeah, yeah, I
And you
remember.
looked at me with this look on your face like, huh?